Alright guys, so I'm going to cover something I've been meaning to do for a while, and that's your first steps to actually modding maps in Battlefield 1942 or Vietnam, because the process is pretty much the same. There are only a couple of little differences between the two, mostly just that Vietnam is a little bit more picky than 1942, but other than that, it's basically the same. So to start with, all you're really going to need is first off an install of either 1942 or Vietnam, and WinRFA, which you can get online for free. It's only tiny, and that's a portable executable. Basically, it's all contained in there. And what you really want to do is probably just create a folder on your desktop. And to start with, you should probably set up files like what I've got here. You don't need this one here, but what you want to do is just have a folder for the maps that you're going to have, be working in and have completed, and one for your original maps. And today I'm going to demo Hastings, and I'm actually going to unpack the patch for the map that's included with the game as well, for reasons that I'll get into later. And another thing I've got here is a folder called Objects, which I'm also going to unpack because it'll come in handy as well, particularly if you're new to the modding, and we'll get into all that as we go along. So to start with, I've decided I'm going to mod Hastings in Battlefield Vietnam. So I'm going to go into Vietnam, into the mod for base Vietnam. All these other mods are just, other mods for Vietnam. I'm going to go Archives, Battlefield Vietnam. This section's important actually because this is where objects.rfa is. So we're going to want to unpack that later, just for the purposes of the demo. Game.rfa you might want to unpack later on, potentially for 1942. I wouldn't recommend it for Vietnam, because of purity checking in Vietnam is actually a lot more strict than it is for 1942, and you can't basically mod your scores in game.rfa and then just jump into random servers. You won't even be able to jump in your own server in Vietnam, it'll just spit you out. But in 1942, you can mod scores as much as you like in all the game modes, host off this PC, and then also play not only on the server, but then on other servers completely fine. Purity checker won't throw up a hissy fit. But that's not really what we're going to go into here. So here in levels, we've got our maps. Now, you'll notice a lot of these maps have actually got basically what you can call a map patch or two. So ignore the ones with 009 because they're actually ones that I've made. The only ones that are really default here are the default maps as well as these 001.rfa patches. And this is important. You do not want to overwrite either of these at all in either 1942 or Vietnam because it will corrupt the map and you won't be able to play on other servers. You may be able to play on your own version of the map, but then you've basically created a client-side map, which you're not really wanting to do unless you have to do. So a client-side map basically means everyone playing on the server needs that exact copy of the map. A server-side map, on the other hand, you can have the base map. You don't have to have that patch. You jump onto the server, and it'll work absolutely fine. The only things you might be missing out on is if map objects have been placed on the map, added to the map, or removed from the map. You won't actually see them. If there's objects that have been removed, you'll see it, but you'll be able to walk through it. It'll be a ghost object, like say a building or a temple structure, right? You'll be able to see it, but it won't be there. Conversely, if such things get added to the map or someone replaces a broken bridge, which is really common for maps like Hellendawn in 1942's Secret Weapons, the broken bridge on there is often replaced. You won't actually be able to see it unless you've got the server-side patch, but you'll be able to play the map fine. You'll even be able to walk across that bridge fine. That's something we used to do in Secret Weapons demo, back in 2008. So, getting back to actually modding. We've got Operation Hastings here. So, like I said, that's mine. I don't care about it. What I'm going to want to do, grab both of these, paste them both here in our original folder, And what we can do, WinRFA, we go open, and just ignore all that because I've been modding in another, place. So I want my desktop. New modding, my modding folder is actually somewhere else, and that's where I normally mod. So we go map original, Hastings, open it up. We want to go extract all, and extract that where. We'll extract this one into Hastings because it's the main map, and then we'll go open. Now this will be easy. I don't have to fuck around finding the folders. Click on Hastings 001, open it up. It's a lot smaller. Let's go extract. Now you want to extract this into the other folder there, and you'll know that you'll have extracted your first one because now you'll have a drop down with all these other subfolders and files. So Hastings patch, we'll extract that, and now we can close. So what we want to do is we'll go back. We'll grab both these folders for now just because it'll be a bit easier than fucking around, but paste these both in here. Now, all we're really going to cover today is actually changing what vehicles spawn as a default out of all the default spawn points. And I will also get into things such as adjusting the spawn time, adjusting the time before the vehicle burns out and destroys itself, and being able to add multiple of that vehicle spawning at that point before the first one has to be destroyed. And on that note, with modding that, basically all the spawn points in the game for vehicles run off the same system. The one exception, or two really, one's dictated by the aircraft towers in Battlefield Vietnam. Now these actually do conform to what the same template as the regular vehicle spawns that are dictated by control points, or not dictated to anything, they're just sort of out there in the open on the map based off the coordinate. The other one is the carriers on the water maps, particularly in 1942. Vietnam actually doesn't have any of these by default, but it does in the World War II mod, as well as other mods like PoE and that sort of thing. They won't actually obey rules that you set up or adjust in the template system that we're about to go into. But today we're mucking around with the map. That's not really going to be a case. I can probably cover that in some later videos at some point. So Hastings, what we want to do, got all these subfolders. These are all important too, because when you're actually repacking this as a patch to actually use, what you're going to want to do is pack it from here, this BF Vietnam folder, not from this folder that you've created and put all these files into. Now this structure is actually the same inside all the maps, regardless of their names, except for this folder, which is obviously named after what the map name is. So we'll go in here. One thing you want to check if you're going to be editing co-op as well. So I want to cover this because most people in Vietnam that are editing, and even most of the time in 1942, they're generally editing co-op because it's no longer 2005 or 2010 or 2012 or whatever. Trying to have the player numbers to play team deathmatch and capture the flag in 1942, or even trying to play Conquest in Vietnam. It's a bit of a prick to have the numbers. So we're going to deal with a co-op mod because I can actually cover something else here that's going to be very useful. People looking to edit co-op, and I think most people are going to at least want to know this. So we'll open up co-op.con, sorry. Now, what you want to notice here is these run lines here. So what this is basically means that when the map starts on co-op, it's going to run this folder and then run this file. That file in the folder. So basically for co-op, if you want to adjust anything for co-op, it all piggybacks off single player for this map, except the control point templates. So if I want to adjust control points I've actually got to work in here on that control points templates. But if I want to adjust the spawns, vehicles and players and all that sort of thing, I need to work in the single player. So this will be important because this is going to dictate what what you're about to keep and what you're about to delete, because you don't want any redundant data here. Anything you're not adjusting, fuck it off, and only work with what you're about to work with. So thankfully, this one I only need to worry about object spawn templates for now. But in later videos, I might actually cover some more complex things where I've got to operate in both single player and conquest to actually fix or do what I want to do in co-op. So yeah, establishing that, we can pretty much delete everything here except, oops, what's in that single player folder. And all I really want to deal with today is object spawn templates. So I'll even delete objects. I'll hold on to object spawns just because I can show you some stuff that might help you understand a little bit more with modding. So fuck everything off except those two. And this actually dictates what spawns on the map. So there's nothing in the game called plain, but you can infer from that title what it probably spawns. But bearing in mind anything with begin rem, end rem, these coordinates that spawn, that's disabled, and that's disabled. This works, this works. Any others outside of a begin rem, end rem are going to work. Any inside them have been cut, and you'll notice on an awful lot of the maps, there's actually been quite a bit adjusted. So particularly in single player, where some spawns are disabled and some are adjusted from conquest, yeah, there is quite a bit adjusted, remmed out, and even on some maps like Ho Chi Minh Trail, Cambodian Incursion, where they're built out of the same map. One of them was made before the other, and then a lot of the time, basically everything was grafted onto the other map and then adjusted. So you will actually notice that if you play around a bit more and wrap your head a little bit more around how all this works. But another thing I want to do here, even though I've got this here, what I want to do is go back to map original. Remember that map patch I was talking about that was there earlier? I want to unpack that just to check. I already have unpacked it, that's right. I want to have a look at it just to check and see if what I'm about to play with is in here. If it is, I'll pinch this copy. If it's not, I can just completely discard all this and I don't have to worry. Now it is. So what I'm going to do is actually just copy this and overwrite what I was about to do. Now the reason why I actually bothered to do all this is because any of these templates here for these vehicles, and opening back up these templates are what actually dictates what spawns at these coordinates. That name, there's nothing called heli. There is, however, the transport Huey and the MI8. So, but what I was going back to, with that patch, any of these things that get renamed up here, you want to use that name from the patch, not from the base edition of the map. And what I mean is having grabbed that object spawns templates from out of the Hastings patch version rather than out of the base version. Using the object spawns page, not so bad, it just means you're using the original spawns coordinates, not the patch versions. But the actual template is highly important because if you adjust this at all, it will convert your mod from server side to client side. It's one of those things you cannot adjust without all end users also having that adjustment. Whereas coordinates, or what actually is at that coordinate, is completely up to you. You could even copy and paste this 500 times, write random numbers as long as they fit in the map confines, and you just have all sorts of random spawned helis and planes and jeeps and shit everywhere. But other players will be able to join it absolutely fine. So establishing that, what we can do today, having a look, there's a quad 50 there. If you want, you can make it so that that point actually spawns a ZSU. Now, I'm pretty confident that that is the right label for what I want to put there. But if I'm ever unsure, we can go back, and like I said, there's that objects file that we can unpack. And the reason we want to do that is we can actually see the names of all the vehicles in the game. And this is especially important for vehicles like the KA25. Now, the name could have a dash in it, or it might not. And depending on what you put, something might spawn or something might not. Like if you stuff up this name here, it won't ruin your mod. It just means that that object template spawn no longer works. So we'll go and we'll get that unpacked. We'll have to go back into the game. I didn't actually grab a copy of the Objects.rfa, but I can grab it straight out of the game. It's not a problem, as long as I don't actually edit it. So we'll go EA Games, Vietnam, mods. In the mod we want to work on, go archives, objects.rfa. Now it'll take a while for this one to unpack. It's actually a little bit bigger than the individual maps. Where are we looking? So we'll let that run. Don't close our WinRFA till it actually pops up with ready here. Now you're right to shut it. Objects, vehicles, and we'll go land. Now ZSU is under ZSU, so cool, we know that's fine. But like I said, if we go vehicles, air, AC47, now that's your Chinook. Oh no, that's not. That's the take that back. That's the large bomber. What's the Chinook under? OH6 is your Loach. UH1, that's your different Huey types. KA25 does have a dash in the name. F4 Phantom doesn't have any, and no spaces. Now you need to get this letter for letter, character for character correct in order to actually have it working. Where was Chinook? Oh, Chinook's just under Chinook, sorry. But yeah, just make sure if you ever want to adjust any vehicles here, you grab this name. So now what we've already adjusted here on the actual templates, any point where there is a quad, now if the quad's destroyed and NVA has that flag, we'll have a ZSU spawn instead. What we can do is we can actually make it spawn every 10 seconds after it's been destroyed rather than every 60. And with planes, we can make that a 5-second spawn time. We can see that because both the planes are listed here, the map is just going to more or less, if that theoretically that base gets captured, that spawn's still going to work. This isn't always the case. A lot of maps, basically there's only like one line in, it looks something like that. And so if that airfield got captured with those heli spawners, there's not going to be any air for the NVA, right? So if you have a look at your map, all your different maps, and unpack a few, have a bit of a look. If you've played Vietnam or 1942 fairly religiously over the years, and I mean if you're watching this video, you would have. You'll have a bit of a feel for what you should probably be seeing there, especially once you start, playing around with this. So another thing we can actually do that's pretty commonplace, and this is why I had this here. This is a copy of another map that I've done in the past. This line is present on maps that have been created or edited with Battlecraft, but a lot of the original maps don't actually have it listed. So I'm actually going to flog it and put it in this new copy here. So that example basically just existed, so I could pinch this line of code and put it here. So what this is going to mean, we can put it from any number from 1 up to 6. And say if it's on 6, at the Corsair or MiG-17 spawns, the bomber spawns on Operation Hastings in Vietnam, for instance, every 5 seconds, there's going to be a plane spawn at that location up until there's 6 in the air from that spawn point. After that, you're going to have to destroy one of them. Otherwise, we can make it 2 if you just want it to be like a dual spawn, or 4, 3 or 4 or whatever. So you can add that line in to most spawns in the game. Just bearing in mind that if you ever are editing your object spawns themselves and putting in all new coordinates, like say we go back to say you just make some random ass heli spawn point and it's on like a decline on the hill and the heli starts sliding, which it will if it's like an MI8 or a Chinook, I think. Whereas Huey and Cobra, because they've got the rails, they tend to be quite good on inclined surfaces. What will actually happen is the wheeled helis, as well as some of the vehicles, land vehicles, will actually start to slide down the hill, and if they slide far enough off this coordinate, it'll trigger another spawn. And the annoying thing is, it won't necessarily leave enough space before that second spawn hits for them to not actually collide and either just outright explode on each other, or even just come away with a fairly hefty amount of damage done to both vehicles. So that's something you're probably going to have to keep in mind when you start doing a bit more advanced stuff, like playing around with your own spawn points. But it is probably the next step that you're going to tackle when it comes to Battlefield Vietnam or 1942 modding. So yeah, other things you can adjust here is the time to live. So that's basically after a certain distance traveled from the original coordinate, all vehicles in the game will just fucking randomly explode. And the way to actually make this not happen is you can just do that. Or if you want it to happen quite quickly, like say you only want a single Jeep spawn in the game, grab this line here. We don't even need to add it, because by default, if that's not in, it's only going to basically count that as 1. But let's say, this bad map for picking Jeeps, but let's say the boats. Say we've only got that on 1. And I think this distance actually dictates how far away that's got to be. I need to confirm that. I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not going to touch that. I've never actually modded that. I've never actually adjusted that. But if you wanted to make it so once you're past that safe distance for the boats to more or less destroy themselves straight after they've been, idled, so that both A, the enemy can't pinch them, and B, they, respawn back at base and, other sets of bots or players or whatever can use them, you just drop that back to, say, 10 seconds. Obviously drop that to 10 seconds. And basically, the sampan takes off from the Vietnamese base. The guys jump out of it. 10 seconds later, it blows up. Another 10 seconds later, it respawns. And then you can make it so that 2 sets spawn at once, or 3 sets, or 5 sets, or whatever, up to 6 at that one spawn point, or function. So, what else did I really want to adjust here, I guess? Adding that line, I don't think that's necessarily a problem with the quads, considering they're stationary. But then it means if the NVA's got the base, obviously the ZSU is going to spawn at that same point, and then you can have 2 sets of them because I've got max number of objects spawned there. We can, drop that down to 10. We can up this because I fucking hate playing against APCs. What we can even do is make it so rather than having tanks, we can have it so that there's MI8s. But if we do it this way, we go back, that used to have a US spawn on it, but now I've got, a NVA vehicle on there. But I can leave it at that if I like. In fact, another thing you can do, say a spawn point is on, a grey flag. Normally vehicles, their spawn timers don't work, but what you can actually do is do that. And so it means that a vehicle is going to spawn at that object template regardless of whether it's being held, like say, this UE spawner, I know that that's at the US base, which is flag ID 1, US base. If I looked a little bit deeper, I'd be able to figure all this out, but at least I sort of know because the object spawns, this one actually tells me. But assuming, let's say, that flag is actually grey, neither of these vehicles are going to spawn. But if I wanted, I could even make a different vehicle entirely spawn. Ta-da! Whoops. Ta-da! There we go. And something that I wasn't going to cover that I can... Where is SetTeam? I'll probably have to do a little bit of digging here. So I'm going to cheat a little bit. This is a bit more advanced. You can ignore a lot of this stuff. Here we go. So this is sort of the creme de la creme of vehicle template manipulation server-side. What you can actually do, these flags, these OSIDs actually dictate that it's tied to a flag and will basically switch templates based on the flag status. But what you can actually do is knock that out entirely, and that's just going to spawn. But what's it going to spawn as? Well, we can set it to Team 1 or Team 2 or Team 0. And realistically, you can take all of these OSIDs off and make it so that no vehicles are tied to any flag on the map. They just spawn there based off which team you set them to. So say heli spawners, I can have, a Team 1, a Team 2, a Team 0, and I can even have one that is dictated by what the flag is captured as. So, whether this is Huey Assault Spawner or Heli Spawner, all that's going to do is just run off what vehicle you've got selected on here, and based on, whether it uses the team setting hard set, or whether it uses, actually, I'll highlight the right one there. So that one's just going to set straight to Team 2 there for Heli Spawner. Or if I've got OSID for a Heli Spawner, it's basically that flag, which is US base, depending on what state that is, whether it's neutral or whether it's Team 2, which is always the US side, or Team 1, which is always the NVA side. It's always going to, pick it based off what team it's flagged as at the moment. So that's probably the final step with manipulating that. It's honestly something I've got to play around with a little bit more myself to really maximize the amount of vehicles, different types of vehicles you can have on maps. Because realistically, once you start using this, because almost no maps do by default, you can basically increase the amount of vehicles you've got on the map by, 50%. Even more if, if there was some lines like this one where there was only one vehicle set there. So it just takes basically using SetTeam, because if it's got OSID, you can get all sorts of weird things happening. Like I was modding in Point of Existence, that casino map that I actually picked this team map out on, team line out on. I was basically using the machine gun template for a heli that I was putting on the map that wasn't originally on the map, because it's not an air map, right? But what I was noticing was that some of those MGs, once they were destroyed, a heli would now be spawning on top of the sandbag and falling down. So you've got to be a bit careful with that, and just make sure you use the right set. You switch everything from SetOSID to SetTeam, so that, rather than it being dependent on a flag state, you can just outright pick which vehicle you want, because you set team, and then you just use that team number that you've got the vehicle on set object template. Obviously, you should be looking at Huey Assault Spawner, not Heli Spawner, because that's another thing. This is going to dictate which template actually runs, and like I said, you can adjust any of these templates, any of these object spawns absolutely fine. Coordinates, which template's running, switching between OSID and using the team set team system. That's all fine. The only thing you really can't adjust here is anything to do with namings of your object spawn templates, because that'll ruin it as a server-side map, and players will have to download it. All right, so we're going to get back into, I guess, the last step here, and that's actually packing the mod properly and running it properly without fucking anything up. So, like I said, I really only want to muck around with the object spawn templates here and use what I've adjusted in here. It's basically been meaningless garbage just for the video, but I'm going to show you what you're going to have to do, to actually get it working in game. So I didn't adjust anything in object spawn, so I can honestly fuck that off as well. And if I ever need to refer to that for whatever reason, or I decide I want to adjust it later, I've got a copy here in map original anyway. And on top of that, I've already unpacked the patch version in case there is any outlandish difference that is so much better. I can already, go through here and grab it from there. In fact, that's pretty much all that's in Hastings patch. And not every patch is going to have, let's go through to it again. Not every patch is going to have, say, these exact files. Sometimes it'll be others that are adjusted. Sometimes it's these and some others, blah, blah, blah. If it's not here, if what you're looking to adjust isn't in the patch version, don't worry about it. Just use the base version. If there is a patch version, always grab the patch version and overwrite the original version. Just for peace of mind, you might not actually have to for some specific instances, like when it is object spawns rather than object spawns templates, but just for peace of mind, it's always best to. So getting back to things, we're actually going to pack it, and then we're going to put it in our levels folder, and I'll actually grab, well, I'll just leave that there. I'll tell you through, I'll walk you through it. So basically, if we want to pack what I've been playing with, I've got it here on the desktop under my new modding folder. So we've got our basic vehicles changes, Hastings patch I didn't actually end up doing anything with. So we've got Hastings here, but instead of selecting this folder again, select that BF Vietnam folder. So click OK and click pack. Now it's just going to open some random folder. So we'll just straight back to the desktop. We go new modding. And if we go basic vehicles changes, I can either just put it here, and what I can actually do is double click this, copy this, paste this, but always use a new number. So you never want to overwrite the original copy, and you never want to overwrite the original patch copy. So these won't necessarily always be 001. They can be realistically any number between 001 and 006. I'll leave that open there, but I'll actually open up my 1942 and I can show you what I mean here. So we go 1942. Structure's pretty much the same as Vietnam. So I've got 006 in use. I haven't actually modded a hell of a lot in 1942 at the moment. I've really only modded Battle Axe and Secret Weapons Hell and Dawn map. Because Hell and Dawn is the best 1942 map by a mile. If you play anything else, you're stupid. But that aside, yeah. I've deliberately not overwritten anything here. I've just chucked that in there, and that works absolutely fine. I can join Battle Axe on my own server. I can join Battle Axe on other people's servers, and they can join Battle Axe on my server. So we'll just put this as 008. And just for the purposes of the video, pretend 009's not there. Oh shit, I've actually got this exact map open as well. So knowing that, I've actually got servers open in the background, and I've actually got the very map that I'm talking about running. So I want to definitely stop this before, and sorry if anyone's online, but the server's going down. I want to stop this before I go playing around with any of my files. So close this, and what happened there? I actually did click packing it. So we'll go back through the packing process again, because I can actually talk about something else. So again, I want to pack what I've just worked on. So you got basic vehicles changes, Hastings. Don't worry about Hastings patch. But you want to select BF Vietnam, not whatever folder you called it what you were working in. And we'll just save that. 008. But if you are trying to save it inside here, it won't actually work. Yeah, it can't save inside source directory. But I usually find it easiest to put it basically just in here, because then I can work on a slew of maps together, and then I can have, Hastings, Irving, Hue, Quang Tri, all of it just listed out here, and then just copy it all, paste it into my game folder as I go. So 008, so I'm not overwriting anything. And then we'll just grab this RFA, copy it, and then just paste it straight into the game. Continue. Boom, boom, boom. So the beauty of doing things this way, I haven't had to adjust anything inside the game folder. I've now got unpacked objects, so anytime I want to look at different object names, I can. I've got original versions of my maps here as well. In case I ever do accidentally overwrite anything, I can just copy this, plonk it straight back in, and I've fixed whatever I've done. I've also got all this unpacked already, so say I suddenly decide I want to play with the control points on Hastings, and we went over this earlier. I can open this up. Oh, I need control point templates. So I can grab the conquest folder, copy that, bring that over into my basic vehicles changes, paste it, get rid of everything except control points, templates, fuck all that off. And now what we can do, say we want to flip the teams. We've got NVA base at the top, USA base at the bottom. One thing that you might have to look into, if you are going to do flip spawns on air maps, runways and air helipads may not function correctly in terms of the repair. The ammo gain usually still does work from memory, particularly in 1942. The other thing is, depending on the map, sometimes the spawns might not work at all, and then if they don't, the spawns might not work at all when they flip. So if that's ever the case, you can just go back in here and then just have a look. Say you'd see what you'd see is more or less your plane spawner would be like that. It'd be US plane spawner, and you'd have basically. I'll just do a mock. So we'll just grab all this. I probably actually could find you an example, but this would be more like what you'd actually see. So you'd see something like that instead. And so what you'd have to do is, grab this, plonk this down here, grab this, plonk that up there, and it's fixed. And now, basically, if you do flip team spawns, or if it's a map where, say, a main base gets captured in the air normally doesn't function, now it'll work absolutely fine. So we'll just grab all that, because I just know having changed anything to do with the object spawner names, you'd fucking break it. So I can save that. I know that's back to vanilla. But anyway, we'll go back to our control points templates. Say we not only wanted that US base to be taken, but hey, let's give both teams the next base up. So forward fire base as well. And let's say fishing village for the US. Well, formerly NVA on the bottom side, but now US. Oh, and we don't want it to be main bases. So having a look, the regular spawns capture time, it's 15. So double that, and it's a 30-second conversion time to actually go from team 2 to neutral to team 1, or team 1 to neutral to team 2. So we can drop this back to 15 seconds, or say we wanted to, you know, semi-mainify it, we could bump this up to, we could bump up another one to 45, or even bump this up to 90. And, you know, it's going to take 3 minutes to actually capture the fucking flag by yourself. Other things like area value and stuff, I won't really go into because that gets a lot more complex. I can't remember whether how to make things main or remove like uncapturable status. So I'll have to look up that. It's something I haven't actually played around a lot with. Normally I just play with the actual capture times just to make it, you know, really difficult or really easy, depending on what I want to do. But, you know, say you now want to use that object spawns, what you can actually do is I like to do this. Having kept it here, if I want to, I can just copy that, delete it, open this up, go pack, desktop, new modding, basic vehicle changes, but it's not that anymore, is it? It's basically vehicle changes plus adjusted flag spawns, but I know that off the top of my head. You can rename the folders and stuff if you like. Doesn't really matter, it's up to you. But just remember to grab BF Vietnam, pack, just paste that. And I've already got the numbering system that I want to use because I've copied it straight out of my modding. Save, close that. Now we can grab that, drop that in here. And like I said, as long as you're not overriding either of these two, and then this one that I've got here is the, you know, the actual mod map that I want to use, you're hunky-dory. You really only should have one custom map because I believe it's just going to more or less basically work like this. So this runs, then this runs, then this runs, then this runs. So you don't want to have any extra copies in here if you can help it. Just basically have the most proofed up copy of your mod in the one file that you can. I'll just get rid of that because I'm not actually looking to use that. My version of Hastings is superior. And like I said, always try and minimize the amount of files that you've got in your RFAs because the map will just run faster and more stable. And it just, you know, it helps you know what you've adjusted as well. So it's another big thing, particularly for troubleshooting if you end up fucking anything up, which I did an awful lot when I first started, guys. So that leads me to the next thing. If you've got any questions or you make any mistakes, feel free to reach out to myself or other 1942 or Vietnam modders for help. So guys, I think that pretty much wraps things up for, I guess, a basic spawn templates, and I even covered, I guess, the actual object spawns and what was it called? Control point templates. I was going to say flag spawn templates, but that sounded dumb, didn't it? Anyway, guys, that'll be enough for me for now. I'll probably cover some other stuff to do with modding at a later date, like AI in Team Deathmatch and capture the flag for 1942. So I'll cover that in another video, but peace out.